Joining us now on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline is Utah State play-by-play man Scott Garrard. Scott, welcome to BYU Sports Nation.
Two of my favorite people on the planet. How are you guys?
Well, there's lie number one out of the way, so no, I kid. It's great to have you with us, man. We're trying to figure out what in the world is going to happen tonight and still trying to figure out what the identity of Utah State football is right now through their 4 games. How would you define the Aggies' identity right now?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I talked to Coach Wells, and he and I do a weekly show, and I asked him, do you know who this team is? And he's always mentioned about after this game, he goes, I think I'll have a pretty good vibe as to who this team is around early to mid-October. And I think he pointed at this game as being the one where he'll start, like, I know who this team is. Because, let's be honest, the strength of schedule hasn't been that difficult for Utah State. Sure, Michigan State was good, and they put up 31 points in a game that probably they should have won had they made a few more plays. But then it dropped off dramatically. I mean, obviously, with New Mexico State and Tennessee Tech, you put up 60 and 70 points against them. Air Force, they put up 42 in a game they probably should have won by a larger margin. So this is a very explosive offense, but they haven't faced, outside of Michigan State, a really dominant defense. And so the question is going to be, how do they increase points? How do they get that offense rolling when they're up against a defense that can go toe-to-toe with them and try to out-physical them? So I think a lot will be learned about this team tonight. I would love to give you a great answer about I know exactly who this team is, but I'm a little bit like you guys. I'm not really sure who this team is, but I think tonight will give us will get us a little closer to that answer.
Regardless of opponent, 52 a game is 52 a game, the nation's number 4 scoring offense. So do you believe Utah State can move the ball and get into the end zone enough tonight?
So I think there are two different things there. Number one, yes, I do believe they'll be able to move the ball. Number two, though, will they be able to score touchdowns? I think it's going to be interesting. I think from 20 to 20, they'll move the ball against BYU. I think that they'll have success, and I think at the end of the game, you'll see a large amount of yardage. However, do drives stall inside the 20-yard line? I think that's going to be the interesting question. I mean, you guys remember the go fast, go hard offense. You know that sometimes it would stall inside the red zone. That hasn't been a problem for Utah State this year. They've been a good red zone touchdown offense. But when you play a team that's more physical, that's a little bit more disciplined, that's got more talent in it, like they do against BYU tonight, that's going to be the question. Because Dominic Everly is a tremendous kicker. I mean, he's a Lou Groza finalist from last year. He's perfect on the season in field goals and extra points. But they do not want him out on the field kicking field goals. And to me, that could be an issue in this game. If drives stall inside the 20 and they're kicking field goals, that's going to give BYU every opportunity to win this game.
The voice of the Aggies, Scott Garrard, with us on BYU Sports Nation. Right now, the experts in the desert have BYU as a 2.5-point favorite. Now, knowing what we know, that essentially means if the game were played at a neutral site, it would be a toss-up. Do you think that is a fair line right now?
I think so. What's the old adage? You get 3 points at home. So essentially, this is a pick'em game. I know I'm on BYUtv, so I don't want to talk too many gambling lines right now, but I understand. But honestly, Vegas is looking at that line and saying, yeah, this is kind of a toss-up. We'll give BYU a couple points for being at home. If it was in Logan, it'd probably be a Utah State -2 or something along those lines. So, yeah, I think this is a toss-up game with a couple points thrown in for being at home at BYU.
It's an intriguing quarterback matchup because you have Tanner Mangum, who has had some real success against Utah State before in his only start. Yet it's a different Tanner Mangum. Then you have Jordan Love, who I perceived was a runner and just an okay passer, and now he seems to be an excellent passer. So who do you think has the bigger influence on the game tonight, Jordan Love or Tanner Mangum?
It's got to be Jordan Love. I think Tanner has been able and by the way, props to Coach Grimes and that staff. I think they've done a really good job of putting Tanner in situations where he can be successful. I think especially in that Arizona game where they were getting him out of the pocket, Arizona kept fighting on that play action and getting him out on the rollout. I think it's been really smart. They haven't done things to, force Tanner into situations where he would make the big mistake. But I know that's going to be a role of Utah State. I'm going to say, hey, Tanner, try to beat us. And that'll be a big question mark in this game if Utah State can take away the run. But Jordan Love he's all about, he's the key to that offense. He's the one that's made that thing go. He wasn't great at the end of last year when they gave him the reins. I thought he was pretty mediocre in the bowl game against New Mexico State that they ended up losing in Arizona. but he has come out of the season just on fire. He's thrown 3 interceptions. 2 of them have come on pressure that really weren't his fault. He's been hit as he's thrown. So for the most part, he's been very accurate. He's been very efficient. He really well, and they've given him a ton of autonomy to be able to run the offense the way that he wants. He's calling plays at the line of scrimmage. And if he struggles tonight, Utah State's entire offense will struggle. If Tanner Mangum struggles, I think BYU will still be able to run the ball. So I think BYU's more of a team-heavy offense. Utah State really relies on Jordan Love to be successful.
Utah State play-by-play man Scott Garrard with us now. I tend to feel like if this game gets into the 30s, there is a major advantage for Utah State because of their explosive offense and because of the lack of explosion we have seen from BYU. The Cougars' season high is 30. That came against McNeese. If you go to FBS opponents, it's 28 against Arizona. Does a high-scoring game dramatically favor Utah State?
Yeah, 100%. If Utah State gets into a shootout, that's where they want to be. They feel like they've got enough playmakers on defense that they can force a mistake here and there. But that offense wants to be out on the field a lot. They want to be, if they get as many scoring drives as possible, that's really going to fit into what they do. The worst case scenario for Utah State in this game is BYU, let's say they get the opening kickoff. They go on a long, time-consuming, 5.5-minute, 13-play drive that ends in a touchdown, and then Utah State goes 3 and out with that pace offense, and the ball goes right back into BYU's hands. Utah State's good defensively. They don't have a lot of, they're getting better. They're getting a little healthier depth-wise. But if BYU can go on a long, time-consuming drive to keep that offense off the field, they've got a great chance in this game. If Utah State is able to keep that offense on the field and get as many drives as possible, then that's going to swing heavily in Utah State's favor.
Scott, BYU's played a tremendous September, 4 Power 5s, 3 on the road. So it's hard for us to know what BYU is because it's been particularly difficult. What's your perception of BYU right now?
I think BYU's vastly improved from last year. I think that's pretty obvious at this point. I think that they have – what's really surprised me about them is the quality of their offensive line, because I think that was one of their key issues from last year. I love what they've done with that staff. I've loved with the play calling. Schematically, they've been really much improved. So I really like BYU's offense, and I think, like many of you, I've been a big fan of A-Rod's for a long time. I think he's a great fit down at BYU. Grimes has come in and done a tremendous job. I think the coaching has improved, but that offensive line, and that's going to be a key in this game. Utah State's very well aware that they'll try to lean on that defensive line and try to really pound Utah State with the run. And if they're able to do that, BYU's probably coming away with a win tonight. If Utah State can stop the run, then the chances certainly lean in their favor. But, that running game has gotten so much better. Squally Canada's playing better, and I'm not, I know that his status is going to be interesting, up in the air going into this game tonight. But they run the ball so well. It's so much improved to BYU, and I think that's been key to their early success.
Utah State at BYU tonight, 9 Eastern, 7 Mountain. Watch it on ESPN2. We're talking to the radio play-by-play voice of Utah State, Scott Garrard. When you look at every individual position matchup tonight, which one of those intrigues you the most?
I would say probably Dax Raymond against that linebacking core of BYU. How does BYU? I think Dax is one of the most, probably one of the best players in the state that nobody's talking about. Real big tight end with and he grew up in the shadows of LaVell Edwards Stadium as a big BYU fan. But he is a monster at tight end. He's got the speed that can, that linebackers have a hard time covering him. He's got the physical nature where safeties and corners have a hard time matching up against him. He's a matchup nightmare. I think he's going to play a key role in this game tonight. So keep an eye on Dax Raymond. I think if they're able to get him involved early on, then that plays into Utah State's favor tonight.
Scott, you're a class act, man. We appreciate the time on game day and look forward to a great game tonight. We wish you the best on your call.
I'm just glad I got to make my Sports Nation debut. I'm very excited.
Yeah, baby.
You hit a home run, man. Well done.
Thank you, guys.
Scott Garrard on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Deseret First, your values, your timeline, your financial future.